Hello everyone, this is John Galt speaking, here with the next part in this creating a multiplayer first-person shooter game. We're going to be picking up right where we left off in the last video. So in this video here, I believe we're going to try to get sprint implemented, and then we're going to enable the use of the Steam API. We probably are not going to get to the menus or anything yet. But we need to get that plugin enabled to be prepared to be able to do that. So let's see here. So where we left off was we have our character moving around now, and we have our aim offset working on both the server and the client, and it's replicating. And we got our jump implemented, even though it's a little derpy, but we'll probably have to fix that. So in this video here, I think I want to do sprint. Okay, so to make these videos go a little bit faster, what I think I'm going to do is actually start referencing another project, so I don't have to sit here and ho-ha and hum as much trying to get these things to work. So we're going to do the sprint basically the exact same way that I did in this multiplayer FPS basic. So we're going to go ahead and create this project here, and I'll put this on my other screen. We're still going to recreate it step by step, but this will just make it go a little bit easier. So let me get this opened up and put on my other screen here. I don't know how many videos it'll take to do all this stuff, but I'm basing a lot of this off of a project that I already have, which is this one, right? So if you guys haven't bought this, I suggest that you do, because I'm basically showing you guys essentially how I created this template, and then we'll add in some other stuff too. And by the way, I did go ahead and purchase the FPS multiplayer template that's on the marketplace. So the person that funded these videos, he actually wants me to use this as reference. And since I don't have it, you know, I had to get it so that I could use this for reference. So we'll probably be looking at that, or I'll be looking at that, and filling in some of the gaps and stuff that it has that my project don't. Okay, so let me get this blueprint opened up over here on the other screen, and then we'll go ahead and get sprint working. Oh. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. All right, we are ready to go, guys. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do this is, I really don't think that a character should be able to sprint backwards or back left or back right, or to the left or to the right. So we're going to set this up in such a way that the character can only sprint when he is actually moving forward. Okay, so inside the character blueprint, we're going to create 2 custom events. Now this is really going to be the first thing that we've done when it comes to multiplayer, specifically for multiplayer. So we're going to right click and we're going to type custom, and we're going to create a custom event, and this is going to be called server start sprint. And to make this actually be a server event, we have to actually check this here to say run on server. And we're going to create another one called server stop sprint. And also this one is going to have to be ran on the server as well. And I prefix these with where they're ran at. So as I go through this project here, if you see me type server, then that means that event needs to be set to run on server. If you see me name one multicast, then that means this needs to be set to multicast. And if you see me set one to client, then that means this needs to be ran on the owning client, okay? All right, and we're also going to create our first variable here in the character blueprint called is sprinting. And this variable is also going to be set to be replicated. And that's what we're going to use to drive the animation change and do some checks. Okay, so we're going to bring this in here and put this to set. When this right here gets called, we're going to set this to true. And then if we Control W to duplicate this, when we set stop sprint, we're going to turn this to false. Now, all you really have to do for the sprint is change the character's movement speed. Okay, so to do that, once again, that's in the character movement component. So we're going to bring a reference to that in here, and we're going to say set max walk speed. Okay, and we're going to actually set this to 600 when we start sprinting. And once again, we may have to tweak the speeds of these. And then we can duplicate this, Control W. And when we stop sprinting, we're going to set this back to whatever the default movement speed is. So to check that, we can come into the character movement and look for the max walk speed. You can see that it's 180. Okay, so I'm actually going to set this one to be 180. Okay, and to get this to actually work, we're going to need 2 more custom events that are set to run on the client. So what this is going to do here, this is going to request, the client's going to request the server to change this character's movement speed. Once the character's movement speed is changed on the server, the client version of that movement speed is also going to need to be changed. So to do that, we're going to create 2 custom events again, and this is going to be called client start sprint, and then we're going to create another custom event, and this is going to be called client stop sprint. And these need to be set to run on the owning client, as the name might indicate here. So run on owning client. And the server is going to do this here. So we're going to say client start sprint. And I'm building this here so that you guys can kind of follow the flow here. And this will be client stop sprint. And really, all that needs to happen here is the character's movement speed needs to change to the exact same thing that we did over here. Okay, so let me zoom in here a little. This is going to be set max walk speed, and this is going to be 600. A little bit too early in the morning for this stuff. We're going to Control W this to duplicate this, and we're going to do this, and this is going to go back to the default, which is 180. And we might promote some of these things to variables later to make it easier to modify these things. Okay, so we got our logic here, and now all we have to do is call this stuff. And the way that we're going to do this is going to be off of the move forward axis. Okay, so right here where we're doing move forward, we're going to put a branch here right off the tail end of this, and we're going to check is sprinting. And if that is true, then we're going to check to see if this value is not less, is less than or equal 0. So type less, float less than equal. We're going to put another branch here. And this, if this is less than, I'm getting confused here. we'll recap this here in a minute. If this is less than or equal to 0, then that means the character is not moving, which means that we need this function here to call server stop sprint. Yeah. Server stop sprint, not start, stop sprint. Okay. And I think now all we need is the key press. So we're going to add an input action. So in the settings here, in this drop down, we're going to go to project settings, and we are going to go under inputs, and we're going to add an action map here called sprint. And we're going to set this to be the left shift key. I guess it's down here. Left shift. Right there. So that's going to be what we use to activate and deactivate the sprint of this character. Okay, and I'm just going to put this right here. So we're going to type sprint, and this will be the action event sprint. And let me look at my reference over here so we get this right and I don't have to sit here messing with this forever. Okay, so all we really have to do here is when this button's pressed, we're going to say server start sprint, and when it's released, we're going to say server stop sprint. And we will compile this and save it. So now let's go put this to the test here. So as the server, if I mash the shift button, really all I'm looking for here is to make sure that the character's speeding up. We're going to change his animation here in just a minute. But as I can see here on both screens, when I mash that shift button, you can see the character's speed pick up and slow down. And we also need to check this for the client. So let's make sure his speed is speeding up and slowing down. And as I can see here, it is. So the only thing left now is to actually just change the animation. Okay? So it really doesn't matter which one of these animation blueprints we start from, because we're going to have to do this in both animation blueprints, right? So I think what we'll do is we'll start with the first person variant of this. Okay? And in the anim graph, so if you don't have it open, just double click the anim graph here. In the locomotion, we are going to create a state, and we're going to call this sprint. And we're going to need to be able to come out of sprint. And inside here, we're just going to put in the sprint animation, sprint forward rifle. So we're going to go ahead and put that in here, and it does need to be looping, so we're going to leave that true. And now we need a way to get in and out of here. So this rule right here, we need to monitor whether or not this character is sprinting, and we do that in the event graph. Okay, so this is going to be the first place that I use the then 0 pin. This is the stuff that I keep separate. So from the character master, we're going to check is sprinting. And we're going to store a copy of this in the animation blueprint. So we're going to right click here, promote this to a variable, and we're going to call it exactly the same thing, is sprinting. And out of then 0, I'm going to put this up here. Let's go ahead and double click to put a little reroute node. And this right here, this little section right here will continue to grow as we add more things like reloading, death, all that kind of stuff. So that's why I try to keep this stuff up here separate than the rest of the blueprint. Okay, and that's what I reserve the then 0 pin on this sequence for. So now, back in the anim graph, in here, we now have a way, let me move this pitch up here. We now have a way to say, if this character is sprinting, we're going to change into this animation. And to get out of here, we just need to know, is the character not sprinting? So we're going to get this, pull out of this and type not here. And we will put this here. So if the character is not sprinting, we're going to go back down into there. So now this should actually be changing the animation, but only for the first person. So now you can see his arms go down as he's sprinting. But the third person is still going to look exactly the same, because we got to do exactly the same thing in third person that we do here. Okay? Okay. And you know what? Just for good measure, I'm going to open up my reference here. Yep, that's fine. Okay. Okay. Okay, so back in the animation blueprint, we need one more transition, right? We need to be able to get from sprint into the jump. Okay? And that's just simply going to be same as the other jump, is falling. So we're going to get this and say if the character is falling, we're going to go into this jump transition here. And we're going to end up having to modify these jumps, because remember, this jump is just the these idle jumps things that we made here. So when the character's sprinting and he jumps, he's going to go back to pointing his weapon forward. See this? And really what we need to happen here is we need to have it play the upper body of the other animation, so that his arms get tucked back in whenever he's jumping too. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the jump start here, we're going to do this layered blend per bone. And the base pose is going to be this. And the upper body is going to be this sprint forward animation. And we might have to modify this too. And let's set our layered blend. So we got to come over here and say that we're going to split this character at spine 0, 1. And we're going to use mesh space rotation blend. And we can copy this right here. So let's select this and hit Control C to copy this. And that needs to go in here. So Control V to paste it. This just saves us from having to retype all that stuff again. And then in the jump end, we also need to paste that in here as well. And we'll probably have to go modify the transition rules. All right, so let's see if that helped. Okay, so this character is really moving. So why don't we modify that jump animation? We're going to create a custom version of this for the jump only. So if we double click this, actually we just need to find this in the content browser. So sprint. Yep, there it is. So once again, let's duplicate this so we don't bugger up the original, and let's call this FP sprint. Jump. Let's put jump on it so that we can be specific about this. So really all we're going to do is delete all the frames except for one, right? Because he doesn't need all that movement. So we're going to right click down here on the timeline and remove all the frames except for a single frame. Just like that. And then back in the animation blueprint, for the first person animation blueprint, let's go in here and actually modify this to the FP sprint jump, right? So let's put this here, and in here we're going to put the same thing, and in here we're going to put the same thing. And now let's see if when he jumps, he just kind of stands still in first person view. So yeah, that's more along the lines of what I actually want to do. Okay. Now, once again, guys, you know, these animations are derpy, but we have to work with what we have to work with. Okay, so we really don't need any of those animations in the jump. We don't need any of those to loop, right? So let's see. So this is not looping. So let's make sure this is not looping. And the same here, this one is looping. So we'll kind of leave those that way, and then we'll make sure that this one is not looping. Okay. All right, and I think we're going to be okay with that. And now we just need to transfer that stuff over to the third person variant of this. So there we go. That's kind of fine. Okay, so now what we're going to do is some copy paste, right? So we're going to try to save ourselves some work, so hopefully we don't end up biting ourselves in the butt over this. So let's open up the first person animation blueprint, and essentially we're just going to copy this, right? Let's just copy all this in here, and let's hit Control-C to copy that. And let's open up the third person variant of this. So in the locomotion, let's hit Control-V and paste this in here. But before we delete and destroy all this, let's just go up here and check this, right? So we're going to go up here, let's compile that and save it. And we need to create these variables, right? So right click this variable and say create variable is sprinting. So let's compile that and save it. Okay, so it's giving us an error here, and that's to be expected since we tried to cheat. So what we need to do is go into here, and we actually just need to bring this in and plug it up. It's not going to let us copy paste those variables for some reason. So we're going to have to go through here and manually replace these, which I guess is still better than creating all this stuff from scratch again. Is falling. Go ahead and get that. Oh, we probably should have just not tried to copy paste. That's okay. This is part of learning how to do this stuff. You got to learn how to debug and troubleshoot. So let's compile that and save it. And now we're still showing errors. So it's the speed and the direction. So I should have never did this. How come you guys let me do that? Too late now, we already did it. So and let's delete these two. So what this is griping about is because this was referencing a different blueprint. Oh, there's one more is falling. So let's get that. And I think we just patched it up. So yay. So now we got to go do what's in the event graph, right? So you remember in here, we are checking is sprinting. So we need to get this. And we already created that variable here. So we just bring this in and do a set. And we plug this up this way. Just to be honest here, normally I wait a lot longer before I split these animation blueprints so that I can duplicate the whole entire animation blueprint and not have to come in here and do this. But since this is an instructional video series, I figured I'd do it this way to show you guys some of the process of this. So now, let's see. Now you can see that when the client's looking at me, he is seeing me do my sprint when I let on and off. And when I jump, you can see that it's not playing the correct lower body. Okay, so let's go back into third person animation blueprint. In the anim graph, in the locomotion, these jumps are different. So what we're going to do here, let's see. I think, well, I mean, it would be just as easy to do it this way, I think. We need to change the lower body of this here to use the third person jump start. So that's what we've got screwed up here. It would be nice if we had better animations for this, but since we don't, so this will be the jump loop. We can just replace this, drag it over top of it and release it. And let's make sure that this one is not looping, right? So let's select this and make sure that that's not looping. And we're probably going to have to change our transition rules now. So to get out of here, we need to go in here and change this because we're using a different jump now. So we're going to type ratio, and we want the ratio for the sprint jump. And let's plug this one in. And we'll have to come back and tweak this, but I don't want to get stuck in the mud. I mean, literally, we could make an entire video series of doing nothing but animation stuff. And since this is supposed to try to cover a wide array of topics, we're having to not put as much time in some of these things as I would like to. So let's do ratio, right click, hello, ratio for the sprint jump. And let's just see if that actually works. We might have to put more more ratio in there, but that might be enough to get it done. So let's see. Yep, there we go. And now you can see that he is jumping like he should be. At least the animation looks okay now. Okay, so back inside here, really we can get rid of this part, right? So we don't need this anymore. So let's delete it. And we can take all this stuff and just move it back down here in line like that. And that is that for now, right? So I think we're going to be okay with those animations as a base to start from. And we will gradually, change all these and tweak them as much as we can. But you got to have I mean, look, there's really no reason to start building any of the menus yet until you actually have a character that can do stuff, right? Because, the guy that paid for these videos, he requested a specific type mechanics, right? Like being able to pick the class of the character, being able to change the weapons of the character from the menu. Well, you can't make the menu to do that stuff until you actually have the stuff on the character to change, right? So I said that we were going to do the Steam enabling of the Steam plugin, But really, there's no reason to do that yet because we are not going to be doing the menus until we actually have these characters with weapons on them and stuff. So I think probably what would be the better thing to do here would be to try to get the weapon on the character. So what I intend to use is, once again, trying to keep this free, all free assets. There is on the marketplace. Let's actually go this way. So I don't use this launcher to surf the marketplace because it lags. It's crap, really. So I go this way. So we're going to go to the browse section here. And if you go to the free, don't click any of the categories here. Actually, just click right there where it says free. There is some free content in here that doesn't really show up any other way than this way. So if you come over here to sort by and you put the oldest first, you're going to see that there's some characters in here. There's some weapons, and all these are free. They don't cost anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on the military weapons silver. Let's use the silver one. It's free. It don't cost anything, and it comes with some particle effects and some sound effects that we can use to implement later. Okay, so you can see it comes with some assault rifles, a bazooka looking thing, a pistol, and all that stuff. And so let's add that pack, the entire pack, to this project, because we'll likely be using a lot of these things anyway. So I feel like it would be okay to go ahead and just add the whole entire asset pack to this project. So in the library, after you get the free product in your library, it should show up here to military well, it ain't. Let's just say weapons silver. Right here it is. So I don't even have this downloaded yet. So let's go ahead and add this to our multiplayer first-person shooter project. And if I remember, this ain't very big, so it's only 226 megabytes. So it'll only take a moment here. This will give me a second to get my breath catched and everything. I hope that makes sense. I'm not really good at menu systems anyway, but we need to get our character to be able to do stuff, because once again, you can't build a menu to allow the changing of the weapons of the character if the character doesn't yet have weapons on him, right? I hope that makes sense. It's a process. Okay, so now we have that pack added to here. And you can see it shows up right here, which I think we should probably just go ahead and move that down into this. So let's go ahead and say move folder here. And we'll have to check our redirectors and all that stuff. And hopefully we don't blow the project up. And then we're going to delete some stuff out of here that we probably don't need. So let's see what happens here. Wow. This is longer than I suspected it would. Oh, now it's moving. Renaming assets. Still ain't done. How about now? How about now? Okay. All right. So it moved it, and it did that again where it left this folder. So if you guys don't remember, let's go check to see if it left any redirects. Guys, this is something that you should do often in your project. So once again, we're going to go to the filters under the miscellaneous section here, and we're going to look for redirectors. And as you can see here, it left a lot of them. And all you got to do to fix them is right click in on your content folder and say fix up redirectors in folder. And it'll go through this little process here where it's updating the locations of all those assets. And now you can see that there are no redirectors. So you can toggle this filter on and off. Generally, I leave that on. So I'm going to go ahead and say disable all filters. No, remove redirector. So now it's safe that we fixed up redirect. Don't ever do this until you fix up redirectors. Now that we fixed up redirectors, we could come in here and check to see if it left anything in here. But really, I think the only thing that it left is probably the map. And we're not going to be using that map anyway. So at this point, it's probably safe to go. See, there's the map. So we're going to go ahead and delete this entire folder and just pay attention right here. So you can see the only thing that it's griping about is the world map. And we're not going to be using that anyway. But if this was to show up, anything other than what you intend for to be deleted, don't do this until you make sure you've got all your redirectors and stuff fixed. So now we can delete that, and it got rid of that folder. So inside there, we now have access to a bunch of different weapon meshes and stuff. See here? And that's what we'll be using to put onto the character and stuff. So that's, I guess we should go ahead and just do that, like start our weapons system. Okay, so in this folder here, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this weapons. And inside that folder, we're going to make another one called blueprints. Okay, and inside that blueprints folder, this is where we're going to start creating our master weapon, right? So we're going to right click, create a blueprint class. This is just going to be an actor blueprint. And we're going to call this BP Weapon Master. So we're going to create a weapon system where we have one master weapon blueprint, and then we create child blueprints of the master weapon blueprint. And that's what gives us the ability to have shotguns, pistols, rocket launchers, and all that. We're not going to have to create a blueprint for every single weapon that we intend to use. We're going to script our master weapon in such a way that we can modify some parameters to make it behave like a completely different weapon, even though it's not. Okay, so let's go ahead and save all this. And inside here, let's just go ahead and open this up. And we're going to add two components right here. We're going to add a skeletal mesh component, and we're going to call this SK underscore FP underscore mesh. And we are going to make that the default scene root. So drag it over top of that and let it go. Then we're going to add another skeletal mesh component. And this one is going to be called SK underscore TP underscore mesh. Actually, you know what? Let's call these weapon, not mesh. So let's change the name of this one also back to weapon. It's redundant, right? SK, that already stands for skeletal mesh, basically. So there's no reason to have mesh in here twice. So to make this a first-person game, we have to create two variations of the skeletal mesh, right? One will be the gun that we look at in first-person view. The other will be the gun that everybody else in the game sees, okay? So we're going to go ahead and plug in the assault rifle A, and we're going to also plug in the same exact weapon for this one. Now, I know that seems redundant. You've got the same skeletal mesh in here twice, but since this is a first-person game, we have to do this way, because technically building a first-person game is almost like building two games. because you have a first person view that you have to deal with, and then you have the third person view that everybody else sees when they're looking at you. So technically, a first person game, multiplayer, single player, it ain't that hard because you never see your third person mesh really. But in a multiplayer game, this gets significantly more complicated because you have other people looking at you, and you have to make sure they're seeing everything correctly, and you have to make sure that the person in first person view is also seeing everything correctly. Okay? All right. And so now what we need to do is get a socket on the character that we're going to use to attach this weapon to. Okay? So in the animation starter pack under the UE4 mannequin, we're going to open up the skeleton. See, and this is another reason why you should only use one skeleton and all your characters should conform. Because if you don't do it this way, you're going to have a heap ton of redundancy. Imagine if you had 20 different characters and they all use 20 different skeletons. That means you would have to create a socket for the weapon on every single one of those skeleton assets. Where doing it this way and making your project conform, you don't have to do that. You do it once, and then every other character will be able to use that same skeleton. Okay. So let's open up an animation, right? This will be fine, the idle rifle iron sights, and let's pause this. And this is going to be how we line this socket up. So we're going to put the socket on the right hand of this character. So we select the right hand, right click here, and we say add socket. And I'm just going to call this weapon socket. And then we're going to right click the weapon socket and we're going to say add preview asset, and we're going to put that assault rifle in here that we're going to start with as the preview asset. Now all we have to do is rotate that socket around so that this weapon looks correct in this character's hand. So I'm going to slow this camera down here. I'm going to turn off my rotation snaps, and let's rotate this gun around and position it until we get it looking like it's actually in the hand of this character. So we just move this, make sure you're moving, you have the socket selected here. So we're just going to move this around. And, you know, you could sit in here tinkering with this for days, you know, trying to, wow, where is the widget? I don't see it. There it is. Move this forward a little bit, down, maybe back a little bit, down a little bit more. And then let's come this way, and it looks like we need to rotate this a little more. So let's turn back on our rotation, and we will rotate that around a little bit more that way. And once again, like I said, you can sit in here for days tinkering with the alignment of this gun, but we're just going to try to get it roughly ballpark close. Maybe move this down a little bit more. Oh, that's a little too much. Okay, and then just hit the save button. Now that's only a preview. We haven't attached the weapon to the character yet. This is only a way that you can come in here and look at this to make sure that you've got that lined up right. His fingers are kind of clipping in. We're never going to get this perfect because these animations weren't really made for this gun, but we will do what we can. Okay, and then let's just hit a big save all here. So now we're actually going to put the weapon on the character in his hand. Now there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but I have a specific way that I tend to do this, and that's what we're going to try to follow here. So in the character blueprint, we're going to open up the character master blueprint. And we're going to come up here to a blank spot, and we're going to type event begin play, and we're going to go ahead and hold down the S key, left click, and put a sequence here. And then we're going to put a has authority, switch has authority, and we're going to bring that off of the then 0 pin. Now, the only reason I put this sequence here is because eventually we're going to be adding more stuff on event begin play. So I'm already just putting this in line here in preparation for that. Okay, so first we have to get the weapon into the game world, right? And to do that, we use what's called a spawn actor from class. And it's asking you right here for the class. This is going to be that master weapon that we created. The BP weapon master. And we're going to tell it to always spawn, ignore collisions. And now it's asking this spawn transform. That is the location and where you want this to spawn. So we are going to spawn this at the arms mesh of this character. And we're going to say get transform. Maybe let's just type, oh, it's socket transform. Get socket transform. And we're going to plug that into the spawn transform. The socket name is what we named that socket on the character, which was weapon socket. Just like that. The owner and the instigator of this weapon is going to be self. Meaning this character blueprint is going to be the owner of this weapon that we spawn and the instigator. Okay? And just to show you what that does is now when we spawn in here, you can see that it spawns the weapon into the game world. Now you see what comes next, right? Next, we have to attach it to the character. Now, there is something extremely important that I forgot to do. This weapon, see when we spawn in here, I see that weapon over there floating in the air. I see this weapon, but look at the client don't see either of the weapons. So something important that I forgot to do is this weapon blueprint here, it needs to be replicated, right? So if you look in your class defaults of any actor blueprint, not just this one, by clicking this top name here, or you can click class defaults, there's a whole section here for replication. We're going to check replicates true here. And now let's spawn back in here and see if those weapons are showing up. And now I can see the servers, the server over here can see both weapons, and the client can also see both weapons, right? So that being replicated, being checked true is important. Like it literally is important. So now you can see what the next step of this is that you now have to attach it to the character. And this is where it starts getting a little tricky. Why? Because there's two weapon meshes in that weapon blueprint. One of the weapon meshes is going to need to be attached to the first person mesh, and the other is going to be need attached to the third person mesh. So we're going to go ahead and promote this to a variable here, and we're going to call this current weapon ref. And we are also going to go ahead and set this to be a replicated variable here. Now, that is storing this weapon that we spawn in a variable so that we can access it later. Like when we get ready to start making the gun shoot, we will be able to get the weapon that's in the character's hand and drag out of that just like we did in the animation blueprint. So we don't ever have to come in here and try to get this again. Okay, so from that weapon ref, we need to get the FP mesh that's contained in it. See, this is another thing that people get a little bit confused about when it comes to references. you got to remember what you name stuff, and that makes it a little bit difficult. So do you remember when we created this? This is the names of those weapon meshes, right? So whatever you name these, that's what you actually need to be looking for. So first we're going to do the first person, right? So we're going to type FP, and as you can see, it's already showing up down here under the defaults. Get SKFP weapon. That is a reference to the first person mesh that is contained within that weapon blueprint. Now, once we get a reference to it, then we need to drag out of this and type attach. And we're going to use this one right here called, let's see, attaches the root component of this actor. Use this second one here. Yeah, target is actor. So we're going to use that here. And we're going to set the location rule to snap to target. Rotation is going to be snap to target. And under the scale, we're going to say keep world. This is the name of the socket that we want to attach this to, which is called weapon socket. And the target here, this is going to be the first person arms, right? So that's where we're wanting to attach the, wait a minute, I think I did the wrong node here. Yes, I did. Damn it. You would think they would name these different. Attach. We need this one, attach to component. The target is the scene component. That's the one. Unfortunately, they got those two nodes named the same, and I get confused as to which one it is. So once again, this needs to be the weapon socket, and this is going to be snap to target, and keep world. Okay. Okay. Now that should get the first person gun in the character's hand, and now you can see that the weapon is actually attached to the character's hand. Okay, now here's the problem. The people looking at us will never need to see this gun. Never. So, in the master weapon blueprint, similarly to how we set up the arms meshes and stuff, if we go into the first person mesh here, and we go underneath the rendering section, and also another thing is that this is never going to need to cast a shadow, so we're going to go ahead and uncheck that. And underneath the rendering, this fold out here, which if yours is not open, make sure that you hit this fold out. We need to, why am I not seeing this? Visible. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm blind today. This needs to be set to only owner see, meaning we're the only ones that need to see this gun. So we're going to check that true too. And now let's spawn back in here. And now I can see the first person gun. See it? And that guy over there still sees this gun. Now, why is this? Well, that's because that is actually the third person gun, right? Remember, there's two. So he can't see our first person gun anymore. Only we see it. But he does still see the third person gun, and he does need to see that gun, right? Okay. So now, back in the character master blueprint, we need to attach that third person gun mesh to the correct place. So we can duplicate this node here. And this time around, we're going to, everything's going to be the same. The difference is going to be the parent is going to be this mesh, which is our third person full body mesh. And we're going to go ahead and do this. And now let's see, what's it griping about? Oh, the target. yeah, we got to get the target, right? So our current weapon rep, we need this time to get the TP, the third person weapon. And that is going to be the target. So let's see if we can straighten some of this stuff back up a little bit. All right, and compile that and save it. And now let's go see if that third person gun is in the character's hand. Okay, and it is not, right? So we still got some work to do here, and this is kind of derpy, so bear with me here. So it looks correct on our screen, but one thing that's important here is that we need to tell this third person weapon mesh that we don't need to see it, right? So back in the weapon blueprint, we're going to take the third person weapon reference, and under the rendering section, we're going to set this one to owner no see. And under the shadow here, we're also going to tell it that it has a hidden shadow. And now let's compile and save it, and let's see what happens. So now I don't see that third person mesh. I don't, but the client over there still sees it, right? So we're still not quite done yet. So inside this weapon reference here, we need to take this third person mesh of this gun, and there is a section in here for this mesh. So make sure you have your mesh selected. There is a little box in here that says component replicates. We need to check that true for this mesh only, not the first person one, only the third person one. And now you can see that the client looking at us is seeing that weapon, and it's being displayed correctly. And then the client over here, his weapon is also showing up and being displayed correctly for the server. And it's casting the correct shadow on the ground. So everything's good to go here, with the exception of we're probably going to have to do some more alignment of the characters' meshes and the camera and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we're ready now to actually start making this gun be able to shoot and stuff in multiplayer. So I'm going to call this video here. And I think maybe I'll make one more video for the person that paid for these videos. I told him that I would make 5 videos, about an hour each, and some of these videos are not quite an hour. So I think I'm going to go ahead and make one more, maybe even 2 more. We'll see. I can't remember what video we're on, right? But I'm going to owe him at least 1 extra video probably to make it equal 5 1-hour videos. But anyway, we now have something to work with, right? So we're going to be able to start making this stuff, shooting stuff and all that. And then we'll start working on maybe getting the menu stuff up and running. But personally, here's what I think. Before you ever even worry about your menu, you need to have something to do, right? Like, how many weapons is this character going to start with? Is he going to start with 1 weapon or 2 weapons? Or, you know, we're going to have to make him be able to switch between the 2. So there's still quite a bit of configuration that we need to do before we ever even contemplate worrying about a menu system, right? So with that, I'm going to end the video here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one, fellows.